Gabrielle Cantor. I'm the program coordinator with the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education. This is my colleague.
Hi, my name is Anita Alonze, and I am the Volunteer Maryland Coordinator for the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education.
We are here today to talk to you about the Maryland Green Schools program, but specifically Objective 2. So let us begin. Here we have the 3 objectives of the Maryland Green Schools application. However, for this video, we're going to be specifically talking about Objective 2, the student-driven sustainable practices. However, just so you know, each section requires examples that have a description or information and documentation. So something that shows what's actually happened. And that'll include photos and student work. We'll talk a little bit more about documentation at the end. But before we go into too much detail about Objective 2, just wanted to recap about the timeline and costs. Applications are over actions that are shown over 2 years. If you're a new school, if you're a recertifying school, it's over 4 years. And that means that if you're applying for the first time in the spring of 2016, for example, you can show activities that happen in the 2014-15 school year as well as the 2015-16 school year. You need to file an intent to apply by December of the second year if you're a new school, or the December of the year you're applying if you're a recertifying school, and applications are due in the spring of the second year. After the applications are due, there is application reviews, which everyone is welcome to. You learn a lot about the nitty-gritty details of how to review an application, and you help us out by reviewing some of those applications. We also have a youth summit in late May, which is for the schools that have become green schools. They're awarded green school status, but it's also for anyone who's interested in attending the Environmental Literacy Fair. It's a very fun event. I definitely recommend it. The applications also are $75 non-refundable, and that's due in the December of the second year or the December of the application year, and that's with your intent to apply. So let's begin and talk about sustainable practices.
Well, Objective 2 is the largest component in the Green Schools application, and we will touch on all of the examples that we include within each sustainable practice. Them being 7 of the sustainable practices that you will demonstrate within your application, and out of the 7 examples of the sustainable practices, you choose 4 of them. With each practice, you also have to show 2 examples of each practice. First being water conservation, pollution, and prevention. Second, energy conservation. Third, solid waste reduction. Fourth, habitat restoration. Fifth, outdoor structures for learning. Sixth, responsible transportation. And last, healthy school environment.
So as Anita said, we need student involvement. You need to choose 4 of these 7 categories and have 2 activities minimum in each of the 4 categories. So that being said, I would not recommend that you try to do all 7 categories. I would recommend you try to have a few extra examples in the 4 that you choose. That way, if one example isn't viewed as an acceptable example by the reviewers, then you'll have another example to back it up. So let us talk about them in more detail.
With water conservation, examples of that include rain gardens and other erosion control measures, storm drain stenciling, students installing or painting rain barrels, students doing litter cleanup and learning about protection of the Chesapeake or waterways, and students conducting erosion control projects.
So this is just a taste of examples. If you want more detailed examples, more examples themselves, go to the actual application. You'll have more examples there, but then you don't need to stick solely to these examples. If you have some things that your students are doing, their actions that are pertaining to these categories, then you are welcome to add those as well.
Second practice is energy conservation, and examples of that include students making reminders about cutting off the lights, students being assigned jobs to cut off the lights or the computers around the classroom or on campus, students calculating the school's carbon footprint, students promoting actions to reduce phantom energy loss, and students planting trees.
So keep in mind that solely calculating carbon footprint is not a sustainable practice because you're not doing an action to reduce that carbon footprint. That in of itself might be a better activity for objective 1, which is environmental issue instruction, environment as a context for learning, and that is, but if you do take some sort of action, then you may choose to put that piece of the lesson in the sustainable practices category, showing that the students are involved.
Third practice being solid waste reduction. Examples of that include students organizing recycling drives, students helping out with outdoor or indoor composting, students planning an indoor or outdoor cleanup day, students creating labels for recycling stations, and students participating in no waste lunch days.
This is probably the easiest of the sustainable practices to accomplish. I see it in almost all of the applications that I've reviewed. So I definitely recommend you start here if you're not sure where to start, thinking of your activities that you're doing at your school.
Fourth being habitat restoration, and examples of that include students planting native plants, students installing bird boxes or butterfly boxes, students helping to remove turf and impervious paving, and students constructing brush piles for saving snacks. Structures for environmental learning. Examples of that include students building bird boxes or butterfly boxes, students planning outdoor classrooms, students creating native Maryland ID tags for trees, and students creating outdoor art sculptures or murals.
So you might think to yourself, well, what is the difference between this one and the habitat restoration? Habitat restoration is focused on saving plants and animals, different species, habitat, versus structures for environmental learning, which is focused on how are these structures helping students learn outside, learn about the environment. So if you have something such as bat or bird boxes that you want to include, think about how is it being used. It should only be in one of the categories. You shouldn't put it in both. But if you are doing something that's a larger project that has multiple activities, multiple portions to it, you can then include it as two separate or several separate actions in several separate sustainable practices.
Responsible transportation. Examples of that include students planning carpooling programs, students creating signage for no idle zones, students analyzing transportation issues or ways to reduce carbon footprint by taking a survey, or students routinely going on walking field trips.
So this is probably one of the trickier ones, especially for the younger kids, or students, excuse me. But it's because there has to be student involvement in some sort of transportation action, not just transportation learning about transportation. So if you can't think of something that fits into this category, that is okay. You may choose to pick another category.
And lastly is healthy school environment. Examples of that include students promoting the use of indoor plants, students creating or promoting environmentally friendly products, students participating in healthy local food programs, and students organizing an outdoor running or health club.
So this is a little bit less about the direct impact onto the environment, what students are doing, and more about what are students doing that's getting them outside, encouraging healthy eating, things that help with health. And so if you are doing a lot of things in this category and you receive your Maryland Green School Award, You may choose to use this as a platform to apply for what is called the Maryland Green Ribbon Award. It's the national award system. It's more competitive than our program, and so this might be a great stepping stone for you to choose. So, as I promised, talking about documentation, Anita, if you could step back just a little, thank you. So documentation, as we mentioned, needs to be shown for every example that you have. You need to have a description, which we call information, and documentation, which is proof that it's happening. The best examples of documentation are photos and student work or reflections. You can do some other things like newspapers and certificates and awards as long as the students are showing that the students are involved. But I would say just be careful, we are not looking for lesson plans. And if you're concerned though about the photos, then I would say there are different ways to ensure that students' faces aren't visible. For example, cutting off certain pieces, cropping the photo, as well as getting backs of students and sort of blurring out faces with clip art. There are a few ways that you can ensure your students' confidentiality. So this is this documentation portion, and that's it for our summary of the Objective 2. We could go on about it for a long time, I'm sure, but these are just also pieces of the application, and if you're interested in learning more about the other sections or maybe getting an intro, you can see some of our other videos. You can also welcome to contact us. The executive director can be reached at director@mayo.org, the program coordinator at greenschools@mayo.org. Our website is www.maeoe.org, and you'll find many resources as well as the same contact information there. Thank you.
Thank you.